In a world gone mad, only rationality and common sense can save it. It's Andrew and Jerry Save the World with your hosts, Andrew Langer and Jerry Rogers. And now, here's Andrew and Jerry.
Well, hey there, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Andrew and Jerry Save the World, episode number 65. Andrew and Jerry can't stand this indictment, or as we were also talking about it, Andrew and Jerry say that this indictment can't stand. I'm Andrew Langer.
Jerry Rogers.
And I am back fresh from vacation, tanned, rested, and ready. We're going to talk a little bit about that towards the end of the show. And as I set these things up, like Jerry and I were originally going to spend a good chunk of this show talking about Devin Archer's explosive. I mean, there's no two ways about it, Jerry. I mean, Devin Archer's testimony on Monday before Congress was explosive. It was illuminating. It gave us yet another piece in a very complicated puzzle of corrupt activity, certainly on the part of Hunter Biden. Most certainly implicated the former vice president, now president of the United States, Joe Biden, in his testimony. We thought we were going to be talking about this, and then shockingly, and I say that very tongue in cheek because I was not surprised. 4 o'clock yesterday afternoon, 5 o'clock yesterday afternoon. The prosecutor, what's his name, Jack
Smith.
Jack Smith. I should remember that. It's such an uncommon name, Jerry. Jack Smith drops another set of charges against former President Donald Trump. And that was my immediate reaction. I was very tongue-in-cheek about this. I think it says a great deal about where we are in America that I was unsurprised that within essentially 24 hours, really 28 hours of Devin Archer's testimony before Congress, that this thoroughly politicized Justice Department would turn around and levy another series of charges against Donald Trump. I believe you feel the same way.
Well, it's lawfare is the truth. And I have indictment fatigue.
Yes.
Because these indictments, when you read them, I don't understand why left and right, those who care about the law, politics, election integrity, those who care about free speech, aren't united and up in arms.
Well, people don't care about it. I mean, that's the thing, right? Now we have a left in which they don't care about free speech. I'll tell you something.
And we're dragged in, Andrew. You and I are dragged in. I feel like Michael in Godfather 3. Every time we think we're out of having to defend Donald Trump, they drag us back in.
Right.
This set of indictments yesterday is so outside the law. Essentially, it is indicting the president, the former president, for alleged thought crimes.
Right. Well,
I mean, this is crazy.
Well, this is what it gets to, right? And this is exactly what they want. They want Donald Trump to be the nominee. Well, they want Donald Trump to be the nominee, but also they want the 2024 election to be about Donald Trump and January 6th, right? Remember, regardless of who the nominee is, they're going to try to do what they can to make it. It's much easier if Donald Trump is the nominee. It becomes much harder not much harder. They still will do it if it's somebody else, but they will still have to talk about the issues, right? Because this is just it. The Bidenomics show is not working. America sees right through it. It's a situation in which, despite what Joe Biden is saying to them, or the Democrats are saying to them, people know what they're experiencing on the ground. So when the AP carries water for the Biden administration and starts to talk about issues, starts to talk about inflation and posits the Bidenomics narrative that things are better now because inflation is only 3% as opposed to 8%. Well, Americans see right through that. When the AP claims that gas prices are coming down, when gas prices are higher than they've been all year this week, Americans see through that.
Gas prices today are 58% higher than they were when Joe Biden took office.
Right. Right.
Food prices, consumer goods, everyday items are on average about 16% higher. Real wages are 5% lower. The economy is a mess. And here's the thing: you're right. The media keeps on carrying water for this administration, but it's not just that. You mentioned the blockbuster testimony earlier this week. Now, granted, this is not a honest actor, this person who gave testimony, but when you're dealing in criminality, you have to deal with criminals,
right?
And so therefore, what was striking to me, there's a thread here. This president is a crook. He allowed his son to leverage the office of the vice presidency and before that the United States Senate to bring in millions of dollars in foreign and domestic firms and interest groups. And you have CNN and the Washington Post and the mainstream media saying, well, there's nothing to see here. Yes, it is unseemly. Yes, it's unethical. But really, we've dealt with this. It's time to move on. We all know that Hunter Biden has a drug problem and this father loves his son, and he was going through this when his eldest son Beau was dying of cancer. So really, there's nothing to see. Let's move on. There's no scandal here, only the Republicans trying to create a scandal. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm watching this commentary, reading this commentary, and it's as if we live in an alternative or an alternate universe.
Well, I think we very much do. I mean, that's the thing that gets me here, Jerry, because you go back to last week, right? And there are lots of threads here that we sort of go down, because what happened between Monday and Tuesday, and by that I mean what happened between the Devin Archer testimony and the further indictments of Donald Trump yesterday, that goes along with all of the shenanigans that happened late last week, right? Where it was uncovered that at least Hunter Biden's legal team felt that they had gotten a sweetheart deal out of the Justice.
Oh my goodness. Have you and I even talked about the plea deal going south?
Hold on, time out for a second. Let me explain something, folks.
Holy cow.
Just for a moment here. So as you all know, many of you know, if you follow me on social media, I was on vacation last week. And unlike a lot of my past vacations, Jerry and I didn't talk really all that much. So no, Jerry and I didn't. You and I haven't had a conversation. I
was concerned for you because several of your social media posts had you wearing a dress.
Well, I was alternating, Jerry, between wearing a kilt and wearing my cowboy top.
Can I ask you that? Let's go off on a tangent real quick. Why do you wear that kilt?
Well, it starts with the fact that it's incredibly comfortable.
It's essentially a skirt.
Well, no, it's a kilt. I mean, it's a kilt. It's not a skirt.
What are you wearing underneath that thing?
I wear underwear under it.
Just underwear.
The full Scotsman's way.
So so therefore, because it's not, if so, God bless you. When you think of a kilt, you think of the colors and the.
I have a tartan kilt.
Yes, but this is not that.
No. So if those of you who haven't seen,
go to his Facebook
about 20
page.
years ago.
I thought Andrew was transitioning, right?
25 years ago, I went to, well, certainly with my man boobs, you might think that. But 25 years ago, I went to a Celtic festival with Janice in Southern Maryland on the Western Shore. And I saw a guy, what looked like he was wearing, it looked like a funky sort of Dockers material kilt. And I was like, what is that? He says, it's a utility kilt. And I'm like, something, I want to get one of those. And it's something I wear on occasion, at home. I have a rule. I only wear it around people I know really well or in areas where.
But wait, what are you talking about? You wore it on vacation.
Yeah, well, that's around.
So all those strangers.
That's my point. I either wear it around people I know really well, or I wear it around strangers. And I got one. I loved it. It's very comfortable. I'm a big fan of the company's sport kilt as well.
The wife likes it.
What?
The wife and daughters like this?
Well, I don't particularly. I think Jan's over it. I think and I don't particularly care if my girls get embarrassed because my girls are going to get embarrassed by their dad regardless.
But you wear this thing in your bike riding.
Well, yes. Now that may have been a tactical error, Jerry. I will freely admit that's
right.
That's
we can talk more about your cross dressing.
But my point is, I wear it because it's comfortable. But I was also wearing. We went on a cattle drive, and I wore my cowboy hat and wore my cowboy boots.
We're not living in Scotland.
No, I know, but the point is,
so when you wear this,
utility kilts have become very popular. They're
popularized. They're not popular. I've seen no one wear it but you.
Well, I've seen other people wear them. It's funny.
You've seen other people wear it. Now you sound like a Democrat.
I was at Disney with my friends Laura and Chris. This is probably 10 years ago. And I saw a guy wearing a utility kilt, might have been a sport kilt, and I walked over and I told him how much I liked his kilt, and I got lots of compliments, by the way, when I was in college.
So once in 10 years, you saw somebody.
I've seen other people wearing them. I'm just telling the story as a story because the point is that Laura and Chris were like, "Well, wait a minute, why did you go up and talk to him?" I said, "Listen, the guy who wears the kilt, he wants people to go up and compliment him. I'm not gonna deny there's a certain degree of exhibitionism that goes along with it, Jerry." I'm man enough to admit that.
This is like you and your couple dating.
Yes, that's exactly right. Yes. Anyway, so the point is, Jerry and I didn't talk while I was on vacation because Jerry was concerned about me, and we had this story about this Hunter Biden plea deal falling apart, and we're going to get into that. Let me just lay it out, Jerry. Hunter Biden's plea deal. They tried to snooker the judge. The judge rejects the plea deal. Over the weekend, then the Justice Department tried intimidating Devin Archer. Then they had to backtrack that. They said he had to report to jail, or that he was going to have to report to jail. He gives his testimony. It is exactly what we said it was going to be. Very illuminating. And then the indictment happens. All of these things are a thread together. But it starts with, or at least in the last week, it starts with this plea deal falling apart, and the fact that the Biden team and the Justice Department essentially tried to snooker the judge, right? If the judge hadn't asked those questions, that's the thing that gets me, right?
And yes, they tried to deceive the judge, but more importantly, they attempted to deceive the American people. Well, yes. The preamble of this plea deal, so not in the deal itself, but in the introductory paragraphs, is where the DOJ and Hunter Biden's attorneys laid out this blanket immunity.
Yeah.
Blanket immunity.
Yes.
It wasn't even in the plea deal itself. So the DOJ was purposefully trying to hide it from the American people, but also from the judge. This is corruption.
And by the way, corruption. Jerry, let's not forget that just days before that had happened, you had a friend of one of the attorneys for Hunter Biden at his former law firm go and call the clerk of the court and try to get a document stricken from the record.
Yes, he was pretending to be a GOP attorney.
Yes. Yes.
What the heck is that about?
I mean, this is where it gets crazy. Incidentally, I'm not going to get into what I'm rereading. The point is, in the end, that there is a thread here. There is a pattern here
of dishonesty, of corruption.
Yes,
and the American people, and making political those things that should not be political. The Department of Justice should not be political. Should not be politicized. And go look, and the thread runs right. So from the plea deal to the congressional testimony, what's this guy's name again? Archer,
Devon Archer.
But then also it spills over into how this administration is gaslighting the American public, and the media is Biden lies. The media swears to it on Bidenomics, and again, just real quick, there aren't record numbers of new jobs. The economists at the White House themselves admit that over 70% of all new jobs are rehires. We know that real wages are down 5%. Consumer goods and products and groceries up 16%. Gasoline is up. Fuel up 58%. This is the state of affairs, and more than that, then you have this craven, what's the word for it? Dispute about the curriculum in Florida, where you have Kamala Harris lying, just out lying about in Florida, Governor Ron DeSantis, the education system there is teaching the benefits of slavery. That is, there's no way to describe that as a craven, depraved untruth.
Well, and more to the point, especially because they are trying to claim that what Ron DeSantis and this curriculum is doing is outside of established educational norms. But if you look at the AP US history exam, essentially, what you could accuse Ron DeSantis and the education system in Florida is of plagiarism, because they are lifting curriculum topics directly from the AP US history exam. God forbid. And so the idea that
the point, outside of the mainstream, again, to use your phrase, more to the point, I don't think we've ever had, including the Trump administration, including the Nixon administration, a more corrupt, a more dishonest government and media in tandem, working to disrupt our institutions, and to fool the American people.
Well, certainly, right. I mean, certainly, at the very least, in the Watergate era, between 68 and 74, or 72 or 70 and 74, you didn't have the media cheerleading for Richard Nixon, right? That was, at the very least, you had a media that was interested.
But today it's worse than cheerleading, Andrew. They are, again, the Biden administration, Joe Biden, Hunter Biden, all of the sycophants surrounding him, members of Congress. I mean, members of Congress, even those who claim to be, moderate, like Chris Van Hollen or others, just lying. I always tell my kids, when you're in an argument, with your sister, your brother, with a friend, or if you have a problem with a teacher or someone in authority, when you label them a liar, you lose some credibility, because it's as if you can't make your argument.
Right. That's exactly right.
Right. However, I'm at a loss here. I don't know what else to say except that the untruthfulness, the dishonesty is epic.
Right.
On every front.
Thing, right. Here's the interesting thing. And I read something, and I don't remember where I read it, and which is sad because I read it only yesterday. It might have been on social media somewhere. So I don't know who was making this argument. But someone had listed, essentially, Jerry, the business of being a newspaper man or a newspaper woman was, for many, many years, essentially a blue collar job. That, you had guys who were hard workers, who were working they were working in an industry, and it was industrial, and they were trying to produce a product, and that product was the news. And then starting in the early 1970s, that began to change, and it began to be the purview of a rarefied.
Well, it changed after Watergate. It changed after.
More to the point, after we had these,
everyone wanted to be Bernstein, and that sort.
But you had to go. But keep in mind, right? Carl Bernstein may have been the last of the true sort of blue collar newspaper people,
right? But that duo, Woodward and Bernstein, became celebrity.
But yes, and that's
thereafter.
But here's my point, though. If you send kids, if the only way you can become a reporter is by going to journalism school, and that means you have to go to a college that has a journalism program, you're going to get a certain kind of person who winds up getting into the newspaper business, and they're going to be elitists, and they're going to be establishmentarians, and they're going to be doing whatever they can. They're going to come out, with some kind of a stilted agenda, and in the end, and that is really interesting. So,
but let me add to that, though, because it's worse than that, Andrew.
Sure.
They're activist. It's not just that they're establishment or elitist, privileged. They are activist. Rush Limbaugh, God rest his soul, for pioneer in talk radio. He said something years ago. He said that after Watergate, after the celebrity journalists, after the, all the president's men in Hollywood started to take real notice of journalists and the media. Young people who wanted to change the world post-Watergate, instead of running for office, instead of opening a business, instead of being entrepreneurial, joining the military, becoming a scientist, whatever to change the world, they wanted to be a journalist.
Right. The next Woodward and Bernstein.
And so they went to journalism school. And then you saw this market change. You and I have discussed over and over again. I think of Robert Pear. He's also passed away, healthcare reporter for the Washington Post for years and years. Liberal, and had a bias, but that's we all have biases. Who cares? But he was wisdom on healthcare issues. Even if you disagreed with him, you never ignored him.
Right.
Because over a 30-year career, he really understood the healthcare system and healthcare policy. So he could never be ignored. Even when, again, he might have put out something you disagreed, you still wanted to read him. I can't think of a journalist like that today.
Well, certainly in this day and age, and it gets into this, this other sort of discussion that I had, not that I want to get too far afield of these things, Jerry, but, when you have one side cheerleading, for the progressives, I mean, that's, I'm not even going to call it the establishment, I'm not going to call it the prevailing class. And essentially everybody else is going to be silenced. I had this discussion, and this is the first time I'm going to raise this today. This week's lunch hour with Federal Newswire, I interview Leon Panetta, and we talk about, the idea of a politician being able to be wrong, and how, essentially you're no longer allowed to be wrong or admit you're wrong or have a change of opinion. And I put this out there, and it essentially inflamed the ire of a progressive activist who tweeted back at me about the issue, and essentially proved my point. And anyway, the point is sort of double down on exactly the example of what I was trying to say, which is, that we have this problem in America where the two sides can't talk to each other and have a discussion. It's central to what you and I have talked about here on the show. You have to be, in order to persuade, you have to be persuadable. And we've got away from that.
Yes. Hey, listen, I misspoke, by the way. Robert Pear, again, a great healthcare reporter. It was New York Times, not the Washington Post.
God, that's all right.
By the way, Leon Panetta, 85 years old.
Yes.
How was that?
Very spry.
Yeah.
It's by the way, wearing my Monterey Bay Aquarium shirt. It's that healthy Monterey Bay living, Jerry. And he's out of Washington, as he said on the show. Very happy to be 3,000 miles away from Washington, D.C. But the point is, we get back to this central issue, which is the Biden administration has to run for re-election in a year. They can't run on their record. The Democrats cannot run on their record. Because they know the American people is experiencing this pain.
Can I ask you a question there, though?
Yeah.
Because they're obviously trying to, I don't know, set the table, create a narrative that the economy is healthy.
But that's just about confusion, Jerry.
That we're respected overseas. I also find it very interesting that the war in Ukraine, it's such that we can't discuss it without being you're pro-Putin,
yes,
or you're anti-democracy, or it used to be that we could have an argument over our policies fitting the interest of the American people.
Right. You used to be able to ask the question, what is America advancing anymore? And again, because it then everything
becomes gaslighting.
Right.
So if you want to talk about money's spent and what's happening in Ukraine, you are in Putin's pocket like Trump. If you want to discuss how we surrendered and withdrew from Afghanistan, well, then you're anti-American and you don't know what you're talking about. If you want to talk about the economy, I mean, whatever the issue is,
it's all about confusion. And by the way, incidentally, which is another thing I talked about with Panetta, which a lot of this is driven by, in no small measure, a lot of this gets exacerbated by foreign governments, especially Russia, interfering in our politics and trying to turn us against one another. And they have been doing so for many, many years and have been ever more successful with it. right? That's the thing. They want to turn people against each other, so we cannot have a discussion about the issues.
Let's go back to what the topic, the main topic of how we started here, and that is this Jack Smith January 6th indictment of former President Donald Trump. The indictment's only 40 pages, so it's not a difficult read. But again, my going through it, I don't understand what law is broken. I don't understand what statute is violated.
Clear, incidentally, that they did not charge him with insurrection or conspiracy to overthrow the government, and that's very telling. Though there is this disconnect between how Jack Smith presented this in his press conference yesterday and what was actually in the indictment, right? Because to hear Jack Smith tell it, he went full bore and charged the president with seditious conspiracy.
I know. Again, misreporting. But again, it's important to remember that this was a Washington grand jury. You and I talked a little bit about this after the Mar-a-Lago raid and that indictment. The president did not violate the law when it came to the Presidential Records Act and keeping the classified material. Right. He didn't break the law. That should have been thrown out by the judge. In fact, I have to say this. I'm surprised it wasn't. I still have hope that there are still good men and women who care about their duty, who care about the rule of law. I'm shocked the Mar-a-Lago indictment hasn't been thrown out. Moreover, this indictment, I will be shocked if a judge just doesn't just throw it out.
Well, I wouldn't be shocked if a judge doesn't throw it, especially.
But we should be.
This particular. No,
I get your point. I get your point.
I know. Yeah,
but right,
because
any person of goodwill should understand that this is politics, this is power, and this is a protect the Biden.
One of the things that we left out of this discussion of the thread of indictments is that no sooner had the Hunter Biden plea agreement been thrown out than these two minor functionaries down at Mar-a-Lago, including a maintenance guy, were indicted in federal court. I mean, at what level, right? At what level does some poor guy who happens to be working his job at Mar-a-Lago, he gets a staffer for President Trump to come over to him and says, "Hey, I need you to help me move some boxes." Well, this guy doesn't know anything about the law. He doesn't know anything about obstruction of justice. But he doesn't know about Presidential Records Act. Sorry, go ahead.
Right. No, I was saying, but so I wrote this down. I very seldom write anything down, but I wrote this down from the indictment. It's a quote. Unlawfully discounting legitimate votes. Unlawfully discounting legitimate votes. So here's my question. And again, any honest person should ask these questions. What about Stacey Abrams, who for years claimed she was the real governor of Georgia? She barnstormed the country trying to overturn the Georgia election. Right. Well, what about President Jimmy Carter, former President Jimmy Carter,
absolutely,
who in 2016 said that Trump lost the election, that it was the Russians who won the election for him. Hillary Clinton in 2016, who refused to recognize the legitimacy of the election and promised to join the resistance. Or what about Hollywood, right? And remember, I forgot this. Hollywood made commercials. Hollywood actors, remember this?
Yeah, I remember.
Made commercials begging viewers to pressure electors to refuse the constitutional authority of seating the Electoral College.
Jerry, as someone who was an elector, who was an elector in 2008, never an elector after that, and not an elector that I could actually do anything in 2008, because I was an elector from Maryland for John McCain. I was getting emails, via these campaigns in 2016 and into 2017, pleading with me, demanding that I not vote for Donald Trump. Right? I have the emails. But
the point is, by this reasoning, a conspiracy to discount lawfully lawful votes. What about 2005? Barbara Boxer, remember Barbara Boxer?
Yeah.
Led a revolt on the House floor, refusing to seat the electors in Ohio, wanting to swing the election to John Kerry.
Yes.
My point is that this can't stand.
No.
This indictment can't stand.
It is a sign. I want to get to the heart of what you're talking about.
Let me say one last thing.
One last thing,
because people forget this. In 2021, you and I have mentioned this before. The Time magazine story that bragged about a conspiracy between Democrats, Silicon Valley, and corporations, putting in $500 million to change state voting laws.
Right.
I mean, why aren't all those CEOs being indicted right now?
Well, I mean, but my point is, in the end, with this situation, I'm
outraged.
I know, and as am I. It's a situation in which an indictment and a charge of breaking the law has to be rooted in some actual
in the law.
And so the idea that the president can be indicted for saying something of which he has no control over, the president has no control over what happens with specific votes, with specific elections. So the idea that he can, this is what gets into this whole First Amendment situation.
But it's this simple.
Now,
if former President Donald Trump believes that the 2020 election was rigged, that's not a crime.
Right. And for the president to come out and say that he doesn't believe, that he believes the 2020 election was rigged, that's not a crime. And the president calling for an investigation, or calling for Congress to say, something, hey, maybe, just maybe, you ought to wait a little bit and we ought to take a look and see if the election I
have to ask you this question.
That's not a crime. Go ahead.
I mean, you can tell you and I haven't talked in a while.
Yeah.
So here's one thing I did think of yesterday, how this whole thing can blow up in their face. So just let me take one step.
Take a second. Go ahead, please.
I'm
sitting back, Jerry.
All right. So
you can see my moves.
So here's the thing. Number one, you and I do not want to be forced to defend Donald Trump. I think post-COVID and post-election have disqualified Trump from being president again. I am not a Trump guy. I do not want him to be president again. I said it. Number two, we know that
I'm also off DeSantis, by the way, but go ahead.
Oh, well, we'll talk about that. Yeah. But at the same time, and I lost my train of thought.
You said Donald Trump. You're off Donald Trump. I had talked about this situation with the president. Even if the president goes and says that we need to stop for a moment.
Oh, yes.
Investigate.
Well, all right, so number one, you and I are forced to defend Trump because of these outlandish, dishonest,
which is what
indictments.
They want. Yes.
And then secondly, the 2020 election was rigged.
Yes.
Maybe it wasn't rigged in the way that the president said it was. But then again, we have very good friends. A friend of the program, who tweeted out yesterday that he was on the ground in Nevada.
Yes.
And that at least 40,000 votes were stuffed in Nevada, and that he's convinced that Trump won Nevada. But here's the irony. Here's this is what I thought of yesterday, wanted to ask you. I got my train of thought back. And that is, a lot of these judicial decisions, all of them, ruled against Trump.
Yes.
I don't think any of them, though, ruled against his claims on the merits.
I think you're right. I don't
think they
ever got yes.
It was because of standing or because of timing issues. They were dismissed rightly, legally, but never on the merits. So my point is this. All right, you're going to try him. This is what I would do if I was Donald Trump. I would forget about running for president. And I would take this J6 indictment very seriously, but I would use it as a mechanism to prove my point.
Right.
That the 2020 election was indeed stolen. And relitigate how laws were changed, state constitutions were violated, how Silicon Valley, big tech corporations, the media colluded, I would go all in and redefine the narrative of 2020.
And you know something, Jerry, in a perfect world, right, we would have that. And I'm setting aside whether or not
Donald Trump should not be president again.
But you know, the other part of this is that Donald Trump unfortunately could not attract the legal team required to make that case to the American public or to a judge or a jury or wherever and prevail on the merits of that situation. And that's the real issue. I want to also be clear about something else here. Jerry and I are not defending Donald Trump. Well, at least I'm not.
Although neither am I, but although it feels like we are.
Right. And someone would say that we are. What we are defending is the First Amendment, right? The ability to say something that you may not agree with and may well be not true and it has to be proved to be true, or you may believe it to be true, but the right of somebody to say this, and also the right of a president of the United States to say what he wants in terms of these situations, which is, you know, again, regardless of who is president, whether it's Joe Biden, right? I may not agree, you know, with Joe Biden. I may not believe that Joe Biden, you know, when Joe Biden says that he was never involved with his son's business, or he never discussed things with his son and his son's business, or he can't remember who he talked to, I certainly would believe that. I would believe that Joe Biden can't remember who he talked to. But I defend Joe Biden's right to say it, and I will defend that what Joe Biden denying these things is not a criminal act.
Right, although he should be held accountable by the electorate if
100%.
If he lied. But also,
and by the way, he should be held accountable in a court of law, right? If Donald Trump goes before a court of law and lies about something, and by lying that means you say something you know is
under
not
oath,
true with the intent to deceive somebody else, that's a lie.
But lying is not illegal. Lying under oath.
No, lying under oath is
right.
illegal. That's my point. Is you know, if he's and we wouldn't defend that.
We
would defend Donald Trump if he lied about something. You know, if he lied about something.
Here's how you and I are honest actors, and the never Trumpers and the left and the media and everyone else are dishonest. And that is, you and I have never said that Adam Schiff should be arrested,
right?
Or prosecuted indicted over the myriad lies he told about Russia collusion. He said that he had seen evidence that proved Donald Trump colluded with Vladimir Putin to steal the 2016 election. That is an untruth. It's a lie. He can say it, and it's up to the media to suss it out and to demonstrate the truth. But I don't think he should be indicted because he lied. Right. Hillary Clinton said after the 2016 election that Russia stole the election, that Donald Trump was not a legitimate president. Myriad members of Congress said this, and other leaders. I don't think any of them should be indicted over it.
Right. And
then the left will say, though, well, Jerry, there wasn't a riot and like January 6th. And I say, well, no. Have we memory hold what happened on Inauguration Day?
Right.
Have we forgotten the riots on the streets of D.C.? Washington, D.C. on January, whatever day it was, 2017, there was fires and violence and looting and all kinds of mayhem. What are you talking about? There was no riots.
And whenever a member of Congress has said, you know, when Maxine Waters has said, or whenever Democrats have encouraged, Democrat politicians have encouraged Democratic activists to go and harass, whether it's Supreme Court justices or cabinet members or whomever, right? You arrest the folks who are harassing justice, or you are harassing Supreme Court justices because that's against the law. But you know, anyway, it is a situation where we are talking about here was the point that I was going to make, Jerry. Another thing you and I have not called for. Now, we've called for the indictment and prosecution of those who have abused their power within government for political ends or for their own economic ends, right? The folks at the Justice Department who did this. But for the myriad folks who spent 4 years undermining systematically undermining this president, unless they abuse their power, there's some kind of an official power to do it. And I'm not talking about members of Congress. I'm talking about folks at the Justice Department, et cetera, who were working overtime to undermine this administration or that administration.
Yeah.
We have not called for the general prosecution. The folks who carried water to undermine on the presidency, we've never called that treasonous, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
You raise a good point here, and why I think so many Americans are just so fed up, because you have Donald Trump indicted on myriad fronts, essentially conjured violations of the law.
Yeah.
They are reimagining and politicizing the law to go after him, and specifically the New York indictment is bogus.
Yeah.
The Mar-a-Lago indictment is bogus, and now the J6 indictment is absolutely extra legal, outside the rule of law. It's political. But here's the thing. Here's why people are fed up. I'm sorry. It's because we see this happening. We see that Trump is being indicted, that the DOJ is protecting the Bidens and politicizing the law. But then we don't see any accountability for Hunter and Joe Biden and their obvious corruption.
Right.
It is. So again, it's like with the economy. Joe Biden says the economy is great, but then I go out and I buy a loaf of bread and it's 3 times as much as it was 2 years ago. Or I try to fill my car up and it's $100. Prices through the roof. I'm not supposed to believe my lying eyes.
Right.
At the same time, the American people are seeing Donald Trump being indicted over and over and over again, and we see the Bidens living large.
Right.
And two-tier justice.
And it's two-tier justice, but it's also, this is why when you see polls about Donald Trump and these indictments, Americans recognize that this is political.
Yeah.
And I would say, even the other side recognizes, if they're not going to admit it, they want this. See, that's the thing that gets me in terms of the disingenuousness of it all. The other side, if they're honest, would admit that they want Donald Trump to be under indictment because they want Donald Trump to be the Republican nominee, because they believe that they believe that, and I think there's merit to this, that Republicans haven't learned the lessons from 2020, that it will be a rematch between Biden and then I want to get into something else, between Biden and Trump. And they know that in that matchup, they think that Joe Biden wins, that Donald Trump loses. And I think many of them are honest, and they're sort of wringing their hands. They're excited that Donald Trump's been indicted, because that's a galvanizing, right? That's a galvanizing act for the left as well. They need to make sure that they defeat this man. It reminds me, Jerry, of something that, again, to bring it back to the Watergate thread, something that Deep Throat allegedly said to Woodward and Bernstein. He said they wanted to run Nixon's team wanted to run against McGovern in 1972. Yeah. So they engineered the election and damaged Edmund Muskie, so that he was out of the running in 1972. They got it. They got what they wanted. This is what they want. They want Donald Trump to be the nominee because they know how to run against Donald Trump. This is incidentally why they are so afraid of the no labels candidate, whether it's Joe Manchin or Larry Hogan, getting on the ballot, because
usually a moderate center right third party would rob votes or steal votes, take votes from the Republican candidate. Right. I don't believe that's true here. I think a Larry Hunter, Joe Manchin, or a Joe
Larry
Manchin. Hogan. I'm sorry, what did I say? Larry Hunter.
Larry,
by the way, for
Larry Hunter.
Larry Hunter was an economist for Jack Kemp, and Andrew and I did work with him years ago at CEI. Regardless, a good guy. Larry Hogan and Joe Manchin take votes away from Joe Biden.
Right, and I have talked to third-party experts who have confirmed this. This is why you've seen the other media narrative sort of going after guys like Joe Biden and Larry Hogan.
I can't believe, Andrew, I've never seen this before. No Labels was the white hat,
good guy,
organization. because of Real Clear Policy and my work there, I'm constantly reading the news and commentary and all the rest of it. I have never seen this much negative press against no labels.
Yeah, I had a really good conversation. I urge folks to go and take a look at it. My former colleague from William and Mary, my former professor and friend Ron Rappaport, who wrote a book on third-party movements, had him on, I think, when I was filling in for Tony Katz to talk about this very issue. And it is fascinating to look at. And that's where there are real fears there. Jerry, can we shift gears a little bit and move away from this? Because I want to beat up on United for a little bit.
So before I ask you about your trip and your air travel experience, I just want to add one thing too, because while you were away, we had what the media told us, and the Weather Channel and the Democrats and everyone. It was ubiquitous. It was relentless. How we're this record heat wave.
Yes. Oh yeah.
And climate change. By the way, no.
Yes.
It wasn't the hottest July on record. No, the Earth's temperatures over the last 8 or 9 years have cooled. Worldwide temperatures in July stood even with years previous. And science is telling us that the reason why Phoenix and other cities did see record temperatures is because of the cities themselves.
Yeah, the urban island heat effect is what they call
exactly
it.
Right.
Yeah.
So just real quick for our audience, when I coached high school football, we had the dog days of August. We had football camp. Yeah. And state law prohibits practice in certain weather, obviously thunder, lightning, but also in extreme heat. And so our trainer would go out with this very cool apparatus that would take the temperature. And I remember one day I'm getting the kid.
It's called a thermometer, Jerry.
Well, it was more than that. It was a device, and it was state of the art.
I get it. I understand.
And
state of the art thermometer. I understand.
Anyway, regardless, so we're getting ready for an important practice, and she comes in and says, "Sorry, guys, it's over the limit, or the extreme heat." And I said,
let me be really fair. It measures the temperature, but it also measures the humidity, so it gives you the real feel of what's
yes. And it was also, this device was also hooked into other weather towers nearby the high school. Anyway, and I had the weather app on my phone. I was like, no, it's 90 degrees and we can practice in 90 degrees or whatever it was. She said, no, Jerry, look at this. And I said, all right, can you show me where you're taking the temperature? And we went outside, and the school had a square.
Yeah.
That was where the air conditioner units were. It was all concrete, and she put the device on the concrete.
Yeah.
in this enclosed area. And I said, her name was Meg. I said, Megan, you can't get a right temperature here. And so I said, let's go out to the field where we're going to actually practice. And it was 10 degrees.
Of course,
10 degrees,
cooler.
10 degrees off. But that's what we saw with this July heat. And again, I want to mention this because the climate, I understand that humankind impacts the environment, and we've seen how humankind can help the environment. Our air is cleaner, our water is cleaner than it's ever been. We have more trees, more forest.
Right.
The environmental indicators are all on the upswing. But that being said, no, there aren't more wildfires today than there were years ago.
Got a great piece on that.
It's up at Real Clear Policy. My point is that I want to do a show with you on climate change.
Let's do it.
And just really kind of get through the facts. Now, speaking of climate change and air travel and carbon footprints, you were on vacation.
Yeah, no, and it's funny, you speaking about the weather events and how these things change. Right before we left for vacation, my good friend of mine, who's a lawyer out in Colorado, posted a picture. This is literally a couple of days before we left, of her travel camper. She has a small travel camper, and it had been pummeled by hail in the couple of days before. I mean, Jerry, it looked like someone had been shooting golf balls at it. And so imagine my surprise. We had to wait quite a bit to get our minivan at the Avis car rental in Denver. And imagine my surprise when the minivan showed up, and it had been, Jerry. It was amazing how pelted it had been by hailstones. It was unbelievable. It was just crazy.
I'm surprised that the Avis workers let it go.
I think that they were caught between a rock and a hard place, because there was a lot of people traveling, and we had been waiting, as I said.
And you didn't get, pardon the pun, you didn't get dinged for that.
No, we haven't yet. So we're waiting to see. I let them know. I had to have a conversation with somebody in customer service who was not from America, Jerry, who literally did not understand the idea that there are golf ball sized chunks of ice that can fall from the sky, because wherever he lives, he's never heard of ice falling from the sky, which is an amazing thing. So we come back, Jerry, and we're flying in and out of Denver, which is a hub for United. And, like everything else in 2023, United has, like other corporations, United has devolved, and they have a bunch of kiosks for you to check in and check your bags and print your bag tags. You can print all this. You can get this stuff checked in before. And
there was a time when like human beings did this.
Oh yes, of course.
But
yes.
but all those jobs the Biden administration is creating.
Right. And so now they have all of these kiosks, and they have contractors who are not United employees who will check your ID and take your bag, but they can't actually help you if there's a disconnect between what you've done in terms of check-in and what actually happens at the little kiosk. So thus begins the comedy of errors, Jerry, the summer comedy, summer fun comedy for me, as I go and have to find somebody. And anyway, to make a long story very short, I just, I said that I wanted to ding. And I'm hoping there's no video of me out there as I got very angry with the people at the gate.
Were you wearing the kilt? Were you wearing the kilt?
Not wearing my kilts.
That would have been great.
I was wearing jeans. I was
transgendered person.
That's right. That's exactly right. Man in skirt goes berserk. I mean, to the point, Jerry. I mean, have you ever had a situation where you get angry about something and you just want to move on from it? Now, I talked to a supervisor.
No, I never want to move on. When I'm angry, I want justice.
I wanted justice, but by the time I got this whole thing done, I had some worker who couldn't help me, who wanted me to recount the whole story. I'm like, I don't have time for this. I just want to take my. Here's the thing that gets me. United.
Did you get your bag free of? Oh, you did get it free of charge.
So, but here's
by a mistake.
Why. So not by mistake, because this is the disconnect between the policies, Jerry. So the point is, how this all started was, we have a group of 4 of us. We had 5 bags. I am, because I have a United credit card, I'm allowed to have the 2 free bags. They wanted to charge me for the bag. And I didn't want to have to go through, and I wound up having to go through my emails and screenshot things to try to show somebody that, in point of fact, I have a right to this extra bag. And
so when you finally found the United employee, the employee was unaware of the United policy of giving cardholders such as yourself the free extra bag.
Told me that I was still only allotted 1 bag. And so they wanted to charge me first $150 and then $40. But frankly, on the principle of the thing, I wasn't gonna take it. And so my daughter said one of the bags was smaller, it could be used as a carry-on. So we're gonna go just bring it to the gate.
So the 4 bags are on, and you get the small bag.
Small bag. And of course, we get to the gate. We should have thought about this, but of course, you're on the fly and you're dealing with this stuff. And you don't want to have to bring a piece of luggage through security, which is just nightmarish, because now everybody has TSA pre-check, which makes TSA pre-check essentially worthless. We get to the gate and they say, oh, we're a full flight. We have limited baggage room on the plane. So if you want to gate check your bag, which means you go and you get the bag tag and you bring it down to the end of the jetway and it'll go through to baggage claim, you can do that for free. So if you just wait, this is my point here in the end. If you just, did we just lose Jerry? Maybe Jerry will come back. If you just wait, you'll get your bag for free. through for free. I mean, here's the thing that gets me, and I'll just sort of leave you all with this, and then I'll sum up the show, because we'll see if Jerry comes back. As I say this and look down to make sure that I have internet. You shouldn't have to, and I'm going to say this to United, and I tweeted at them. Because I used my credit card to pay for the flight, and I actually used my credit card to check in at the airport, I shouldn't have had to deal with any of this stuff. I wound up going through and finding the screenshots of where it said that I was allotted these things. I wound up going and having to contact United about this. United counts on, and these airlines, I think it's general. I don't think it's just United, but I'm going to single out United because I was flying on them. I think these airlines generally count on the fact that you're not going to know what your rights are. This happens a lot in other areas as well, where you're unsure of what your rights are, so they're going to run roughshod over them. They're going to try to get one over with you. And I don't know how much money. Here's Jerry back. Hello, Gerald. He's connecting to audio. I don't know how much money I can, if you can hear me, I don't know how much money United makes off of forcing people who have an allotment for 2 bags to pay for their bags, but I'm sure that they do make money, and I'm sure it's not an insignificant sum. But in the end, I shouldn't have to sort of go down this road and deal with this. And I have the text message from United. I haven't had time to go and now email them, but I had a conversation essentially saying that given what I'd shown them, I was in the right. But boy, oh boy, Jerry, I was hot under the collar. I mean, it was not my finest hour, as it were.
I hate to fly.
Yeah, right.
I just don't like to fly. There have been rare instances where flying was kind of fun. I remember when we got married, my best man drove us to the airport. We from Jersey, we were flying to Florida. And we had 2 seats together, and we had real bowls. We had cereal and eggs, and we had real bowls and silverware, and customer service was fantastic. This is 30 years ago. And then I remember one time I went for work. I had to go to Europe, and flew business class. And again, it was a joy.
Right.
Every other time, it is miserable.
I didn't talk about
miserable.
Something from the when we flew back.
That's a show too, by the way, on how even though technology improves, modernity, how air travel has become worse.
Right.
I suspect a lot of it is government bureaucratic 100%. Interference.
Yeah, your regulation and what that does, and how it forces you to do these things. I mean, you're right. From when we got to the United Terminal in Seattle back in June, and how that was essentially, I'm going to use a phrase, it was an S-hole. It looked like it hadn't been cleaned in days. There was just garbage everywhere.
Yeah.
We flew back. We'd cashed in points. We flew back from Washington State back in June. And we flew back in what was supposed to be first or business class, whatever the front of these United domestic planes is now called. And it was one of the worst experiences I've ever had. The plane was hot. We could not get comfortable. It was a whole thing. Anyway, it is what it is. Jerry, you're on Sunday.
If it's Sunday, it's Jerry, WBAL, 7 to 10. Also, the Jerry Rogers podcast is up over at WBAL. It's all good stuff.
Can we announce the new thing yet, or are you waiting before we announce?
Oh, no, sure. So coming this August, so in a couple or 3 weeks, we're going to launch the Business of America podcast, Jerry Rogers, for the Federal Newswire.
Network. Is joining me at Federal Newswire. Very excited to have him as part of the Federal Newswire podcast family. Who knows? Maybe the Andrew and Jerry podcast will come to Newswire down the road. Where we're hoping for that, or we hope for that. Congratulations, Jerry. That is huge news. I'm very excited for this show. I think it's going to be great. Maybe you'll return the favor, and I had you on the Lunch Hour podcast. Maybe you're true. Have me in on this shameless promotion.
Well, the fact of the matter is that we're going to be discussing the business of America and how rulemaking, regulations, tax law, bureaucracy, and all the rest of it impacts business and modernity and technology and real wages and growth and economic growth. And so your work on regulations might fit in perfectly well.
In that vein, by the way, this week on the Lunch Hour podcast, we have Leon Panetta. It's a short podcast. There were scheduling issues. It's only about 25 minutes. I urge folks to go and check that out. Next week, I have a lengthy interview, I think almost an hour, with Wayne Cruz, Jerry, our former colleague from the Enterprise Institute, about these issues. So go and check that out. Jerry, what do you want folks to do?
Find the truth, plant your feet, stand firm. God bless you.
Have a great week, everybody. Have fun, and please stay safe.